and welcome back to the Film Whisperers, where two movie nerds talk all things film with a contemporary lens. My name is Sarge.
And my name is Matt.
So, Matt, we've been talking a lot about the 80s. I feel as if we need to have a wardrobe to match it, to be honest.
No, we didn't. Yeah, we missed the assignment.
I know. So we've spoken about the good and bad, and now I think it's important for us to talk about the what the f, which is a film, which are the films that surprise us. Now, I guess for the people watching the WTF, they're films that they could be good, they could be bad, but pretty much we watched it not expecting what to think of it, but then we were pleasantly surprised that it was bad, or we were pleasantly surprised that it was good. So it could go either way. But Matt, I think I'd like to hear what your WTF film is.
Yeah, it's like, you know what? I feel like of any decade of film, the 80s is probably the biggest one for WTF movies. Like, you could throw a rock and hit 20 weird movies that came out in the 80s. So I feel like it was just like a really experimental time. Like, there were all these kind of like B movies that were just weird and strange and had these weird plots. And I wasn't sure which one to talk about, but I'm going to talk about one that I just really enjoyed because it's so cheesy and silly and dumb, but it's also really fun to watch, which is called Chopping Mall. So obviously in the 80s, there were like all these really iconic horror movie franchises which were coming out, like Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th and Evil Dead, which everyone obviously knows. But then under that, there were like these kind of more like lower budget B horror movies as well, which didn't do as well, but I was still there for like the fans that wanted to find them or seek them out. And Chopping Mall in particular, I watched. I think my cousin had it on VHS, and so when I was like, I was pretty young. He showed it to us one day, and it was just so much fun. So basically, the basic premise is this mall or shopping mall, supermarket, whatever, has installed these new security robots, which are supposed to prevent crime or robberies or theft or whatever. But then the main plot is just that these robots sort of malfunction and then go on this killing spree. And there's a group of teenagers that are stuck in the mall overnight and they have to try to get out or escape and avoid these like really cheesy and funny to watch like robots who like move around and can zap them and kill them, whatever. And I feel like, to me, like of all the different options that I could have chosen, that's like the one that was the most WTF to me, because it was like such a weird plot, such a weird movie. There are all these like scenes in it which are just laughably bad but also good. And to me, it just like encapsulates kind of like, there's like that, what would you say, like not subculture, but there's like the whole group of movies that came out in that decade which were kind of like that, which was like a really ridiculous plot with really bad acting and bad CGI or special effects, whatever, but that people just really enjoyed watching because they're so fun and silly. So yeah, I don't know. I assume you probably haven't seen it as such because it was when it had been under the radar, but I would definitely recommend watching it if you want like just a funny night, just to watch something that makes you laugh.
Matthew, I am going to stay clear of these horror recommendations that you give because majority of the plot points that you mention on this show are just ridiculous, and I will not be wasting an hour and a half of my Friday or Saturday engaging in these films. In fact, I'm actually surprised that this film that you just spoke about, Chopping Mall, was not in your best, because it's right up your alley of the type of films that you watch on a regular basis anyway, as in horror movies.
That is so true. I should have put it in my best of. And sorry, before I go into your one, I remember distinctly the tagline for the movie was "Shop till you drop ... dead." And I remember I was just so good. Like that to me just encapsulates how funny and silly and amazing it was. But yeah, that would be my pick. So what about you, Sarge? What's your WTF film from the 80s?
Well, mine's got to be Grease 2. Yeah. So I was a huge fan of Grease. Again, maybe next time we'll talk about the 70s and we'll talk about how problematic Grease is. However, I didn't realize that was a Grease 2. And I remember someone telling me, oh, there is a sequel, you should check it out. And I thought, oh, maybe it was one of those, direct-to-video sequels that just didn't get any views. But then I was wrong. I mean, they actually released this film at the cinemas. I remember watching it, and at first I thought, whoa, what's going on here? What the F is this? But then, I guess, back in the day, I just rewatched films just because I wanted to, and I ended up loving this movie. So it was done in or released in 1982, and it stars Michelle Pfeiffer. I believe this was her first role. And she's amazing in it, and it actually has a feminist angle to it. So
okay, so wait,
yeah,
before you explain, so I just want to say, so I actually haven't seen it,
yeah.
but obviously I've seen the first one. Is it similar in like theme and story, or is it like completely different?
No, it's a continuation. The first film, it's set in 1959, and it's Rydell High School, and there are the two groups, which is the T-Birds and the Pink Ladies. This film is set in 1961, so we're now into the 60s. There's still the T-Birds and the Pink Ladies, and some of the characters from the first film come back. And yeah, it's the feminist angle that I've just mentioned. So the first film was quite notorious for just being a feminist nightmare because the whole thing was the whole thing was about the Sandy character played by Olivia Newton-John wanting to impress the John Travolta character, and at the end she becomes this I don't know this I don't know what to call it, like this punk
someone completely
person.
different. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, and it's her way of sort of impressing him. In this film, the reverse happens. So there's a guy that comes into this Rydell High School from the UK. He falls in love with one of the Pink Ladies, and he decides to prove that he can be a T-Bird to win her over. It's done a bit differently as well. There are some interesting lines. I mean, this is 1982, obviously. So, there's a line from the main character where she says, I'm fed up of being someone's chick. And I mean, at the time, I'm guessing for a musical, characters didn't speak that way. And some of the music as well, it's really catchy. Some of the songs are really, really well written. It's camp as well. I don't know. I just feel like it just ticked all the right boxes, and it is my WTF.
Is Grease 2? Because again, I haven't seen it, but I'm aware of it. Like, is it obviously it wasn't as big as the first one, but is it like big enough that it has quite a decent following, or is it obscure? Like most people don't even realize that. Like you said yourself, like you didn't actually realize there was a second one until you stumbled across it. Like, do most people know that there is a sequel?
Yeah, it definitely has a cult following, and I know there are a lot of people who, like me, they just love the soundtrack. Yeah,
check it out. Like I feel like I'm interested to check it out, especially if you're saying like it's different from the first one, that it's actually a bit more feminist. Like obviously, like you said, the first one's all about a woman having to change everything about who she is just to impress a guy. So if this kind of inverts that, like I'm actually interested to check it out. Like I should. It's good recommendation.
I think you should. There are some of the characters in there. You'd recognize the actors as well. Obviously, you'd recognize them playing much older characters now. But this was them when they were younger. One of them is actually Judy Garland's daughter. Lorna Luft is her name, and she plays one of the ladies.
As we were saying earlier, like with the 80s, there's no lack of WTF movies out there to find if you want them, but Grease 2 is a surprisingly good one, as Sarge is pointing out. And if you want something that's just really in the gutter and just silly and fun and trashy, then Chopping Mall is your pick. But yeah, thank you so much for chatting with me about the 80s today, everything 80s, Sarge. And thanks for tuning in at home. You've been watching The Film Whisperers on Bent TV.